I've been locked inside this room for 6 months. I tried to leave, but I don't have the courage. The reason for this is deeper than just my weak legs. I tried hard, but it was useless. The culprits are those damned awakened people. I don't know why, but some people awaken abilities and exactly 24 hours later, you get teleported to another world. To this day, few people have returned alive from there. You have to survive 1 year in that other world to come back. And it seems time their moves 10 times slower than on Earth. Because of this, some bastards, when they awaken, use those 24 hours to commit crimes with their powers. Since they're going to another world and will likely die anyway, they try to live out 24 hours of GTA right here on Earth. One of these people did just that, and my parents died. My legs also died. Now, 6 months later, the system appeared for me, too. This blue window said, my awakened ability is called Avatar, and in 24 hours, I will be teleported. Damn it, I can't even walk. I will definitely die in that other world. How am I supposed to survive 10 years there? I didn't want to, but I put on suitable clothes. Curse it, I can't go. Then an idea popped into my mind. What about my ability? Is it any good? I tried my hardest and activated Avatar, and a clone of me appeared right in front of me. It was confusing. My mind was split between myself and my clone. Seeing from the perspective of two people at the same time made me dizzy, and that timer ticking down 5 minutes scared me. However, I looked at my clone and had a diabolical idea. Isn't this guy me? What if I send him to the other world? Without thinking about whether it was right or wrong, I pushed my clone into the portal. And to my surprise, it worked. The clone was teleported. When my clone was in the other world, I shared senses with him. Damn, this is so confusing. I couldn't control myself, and my head hurt. It's like I was seeing both things at once. Terrified by the sensation, I decided to unsummon the clone, and suddenly, the feeling stopped. I went to the bathroom and threw everything up. I escaped that world. That's great. So, I summoned my avatar again. He appeared. I'm actually pretty handsome, but what can I do with this useless ability? I can't control two bodies properly. Then a notification stunned me. The system said, I completed the mission of returning to Earth alone without using the Karma Shop. New achievement unlocked. Now I can use the dimensional portal to travel to the other world once a day. That I was the awakened who returned to Earth in the shortest time ever. Now I have almost 2 million karma. This karma is paid according to your impact on the other world, whether good or evil. If I become famous for being good, I earn karma. If I become a powerful villain, I also earn karma. But is the way I won against the rules? My clone died, or when I unsummoned him. Did the system understand that he won and returned to Earth? I don't care. It's not like I did it on purpose. I decided to try out the Karma Shop. This enhancement ability might be a good choice, and it only costs 10,000 points. I'm rich. The status I received was recovery. When I activated it, I felt something react down here in the lower part of my body. It was lower than that. It was my useless legs. They started to ache, tingle, and regenerate. The reason for my seclusion was being cured. They weren't just cured. Look how strong they became. In my excitement, I couldn't resist. There must be more good stuff in the shop. I decided to evolve my avatar ability. I see my clone is quite hot now. And the best part, now, my consciousness splits in two. It is literally a clone I can give orders to. Another good thing is that I don't feel the clone's pain. I need a maid. Clone, you have a job. Something even more incredible. Now I can make 2 clones. I need to give these guys names. I can't just call them clones since I'm bad with names, and I like ketchup. The first clone will be named Hans, and clone number 2 will be named Heinz. Now you two must work. One goes to the other world to explore, and the other will clean the house and train. I'm going to do the most important job. I will use my clone's body to overcome my trauma. When Heinz went outside and saw the sunlight, I didn't feel anxiety or fear. This must be the passive effect of the avatar, the mind core. Each of them has their own abilities. Now, let's see what Hans is going through in the other world. A wild animal caught his scent and decided he would be a great meal. The panther attacked quickly, and I only had my small sword to fight. I'm not good at combat, but it's much better to fight without the fear of getting your own body hurt. With a lot of effort, Hans managed to defeat the panther. When he recovered his energy, he noticed there was a village near the location. There, a bald guy said his name was Malcolm and that he was the village chief. He said, all travelers are welcome. He also commented that the young man must be strong to travel alone. And if he wanted, he could sleep in the village and travel during the day. While they were walking, the old man asked questions and discovered my clone was a person from another world. Hans went to the room offered to him. He was happy to talk to someone after being locked in the house for 6 months. But while he slept peacefully, an unknown person invaded the room. Back at my house, by the way, my real name is Xiong Yun. I was celebrating my new life, eating while Heinz trained to the limit in the room next door. When I tried to access Hans's control in the other world, I realized my avatar was dead. But how was that possible? He was in a peaceful place. All the avatar stats were sent to me, and judging by his memories, it must have been that old man. He wasn't as nice as he seemed. Something abnormal happened. When I tried to connect with my dead avatar, I succeeded. Back in the other world, old Malcolm and another person were lamenting that this adventurer was just a normal guy. He only passed through the forest at night by pure chance. The level he reached was at most an elite skeleton. When I connected, I discovered that old Malcolm had killed Hans and turned him into an undead. Now his avatar is a skeleton and possesses abilities of that class. Looking around, I realized this happened to several people. All of these must be deceived adventurers. A person entered the room. It was one of the guys who were at the tavern yesterday. The guy stared fixedly at the skeleton. Maybe he noticed something, but the man just ordered the skeleton to go to the right place along with the others. A strange force made Hans's body obey the order. He knew he could resist, but doing so now would reveal his identity. This clone has the mana affinity ability, which is why he could feel and understand the force controlling his body. Hans feels he can control this power. After a week with Hans infiltrated and training, he finally mastered the necromancer's magic. He controlled one of the undead. It wasn't perfect at first. For now, Hans can only move one undead at a time. He realized that the usual rat was nearby and finally managed to capture the animal. He had been trying to catch that critter for a week. He killed the rat and turned it into a zombie. Now with this, he can leave the room and explore the surrounding area, positioning himself vigilantly. Alfred prépares. Then he observes a man complaining that he needs to confirm something on an old man's orders. The man opens a padlock, and through Alfred, Hans wonders what could be in the other warehouse. Deciding to follow him, Alfred enters the newly opened location. Inside, the small animal encounters an overwhelming presence and questions what that is. Through Alfred, Hans feels it's dangerous to get any closer. Outside, a man praises another's good work and asks, "When will the maturation process begin?" His companion replies, "I feel my life force being sucked away whenever I go out, and the master is stuck there every day." He then questions the reason for protecting the village and building so much, wondering who could invade. Observing them, Alfred concludes that what he saw earlier must be the fragment of the immortal king and thanks them for the information. Wondering where else he could gather information, he adjusts his focus to find the village chief's location. Alfred's silhouette becomes shadowy. Diving into a shadow on the ground, he moves stealthily. Malcolm comments that he was wondering what it was, but concludes it was just a rat. Then Alfred emerges from shadow, and Malcolm realizes he was caught, identifying the animal's body as an undead full of dark mana. He questions if the rat became undead naturally because of the mana. Alfred falls to the ground, losing his shadowy form, and Malcolm notes that this is the only place overflowing with dark mana. Turning to two men, he asks, "Who was responsible for the warehouse today?" He is called Master. Alfred's lifeless body remains on the ground, and Hans promises, "I will definitely get revenge for him." Hans then asks Alfred to look after him from above. The scene shifts to an overview of the village. A man exits a building, complaining that a rat managed to escape and blaming the damn old man. Pointing at an undead, he orders, "Get in line. You're out of place." He stomps his foot on the ground, calling them, "You idiotic things." Then he punches another undead in the face, shouting again, "Get in line." The aggressor crouches down, surprised by the reaction of the undead he just hit. He grabs it by the head and asks, "What do we have here?" The aggressor recognizes him as the arrogant old man who rebelled and reminds him of the threat he made about his family. He challenges him, "Speak again." Then he remembers, "Oh, I cut out his tongue." He throws the undead's head to the ground, finding the situation boring. Then he remembers how fun it was when they hunted the damned villagers. On the ground, the undead opens its mouth. The aggressor says, "You should be happy to be with your wife now," pointing to the line of undead. The old undead grabs him as he continues talking about families and little children. Suddenly, it bites the man's arm. The man is startled and questions, "What is wrong with you?" The man orders the undead, "Stop," he calls it, "You damn thing," and prepares an attack with his hand. But another undead appears from behind and covers his mouth. Struggling, the aggressor tries to break free. The old one bites the man's arm harder. From the middle of the crowd, Hans watches the scene unfold. Raising his gaze, he marks the beginning of the victim's revenge. Insisting with the guards, Heinz states that his younger brother is in the village and has not left for a long time. A guard stops him, but he demands to speak with the village chief. A figure approaches from behind them, questioning the mess. Malcolm introduces himself as the village chief, surprising the guards. Heinz greets him, and the village chief asks who he is. He then explains that he believes his twin brother, Hans, is somewhere nearby. Meanwhile, Hans crosses a portal. Considering the advantage of having two bodies, he enters an underground chamber with ease. Thanks to Heinz, who is dealing with the old man outside, he holds what he identifies as the Immortal King's fragment, feeling a powerful energy coming from it. He realizes that the fragment is not absorbing the energy of the undead, but connecting to fill what is missing. However, he observes the other undead around. He notes that everyone there seems strong, unlike the place he was before, which appeared to be for misfits. He complains that the fragment should not be so disgusting to eat. Pressing it against his own chest, he decides to see how bad this food is. A large amount of energy explodes from his body. Heinz explains to Malcolm and the guards that he and his brother are twins. Pointing to his own head, he states that this is why they always know where the other is. Malcolm finds this difficult to believe. Suddenly, the village chief gets scared and shouts, "There's something wrong with the fragment." Then he orders, "Kill this idiot." As a dark energy form advances, the two guards prepare to attack Heinz, calling him a bastard. But he disappears in a blink of an eye, and the guards wonder where he went. In the underground chamber, Hans is flooded by countless negative thoughts. He holds his head, feeling the intensity of the energy, even though it is filtered by the mind core, debating and screaming under the pressure. He questions, could anyone endure this without going crazy? Then the accumulated energy explodes all at once. A system notification informs that the entity met the requirements and is evolving. It becomes a demonic immortal wizard with its rank increased by the power of the Immortal King's fragment. Another notification confirms that he acquired the skill Malignant Wisdom, which grants talent and knowledge with dark magic. Outside, a man complains about the mess he has on his hands because of an imbecile named Jeffy. He is surprised by a voice that calls him an idiot. Responding to his master, the man accepts the order to stop talking nonsense and check if the fragment is okay. He agrees and shouts from the window to Jeffy, "Check the fragment quickly." Then he goes to the cell door and calls him again, asking, "Are you listening?" An intense light explodes from inside the chamber, surprising him. He calls for Jeffy again, but is interrupted by a step in front of him. Suddenly, several undead hands grab him. Hans emerges with his group of undead and greets him casually. What a beautiful day, isn't it? Leaving the man in shock, the man is terrified, questioning, how can that thing be real? And talking. He tries to break free. Pushing the hands of the undead, he casts a spell against them, sending them back to hell. The spell dissipates without effect, and the man does not understand what happened. Hans approaches with his followers and says, it's rude to respond that way. He observes the dark magic in his hand, noting that perhaps it is because of Malignant Wisdom. He concludes that just by looking at dark magic, he already knows how to use it. A large explosion echoes in the distance. With a step forward, Hans commands his children of death to advance. He then orders his undead, don't let anyone escape and kill all the humans in the village. The horde advances under his command, causing more destruction. Hans points to one of the fallen undead and questions it. Malcolm emerges enveloped in energy and says, you should have become an elite skeleton, revealing himself as the elder Marcos Jokali. He asks, what did you do with the Immortal King's fragment? Hans stares at him and says, it's been a while. Do you remember me? He then explains that thanks to Marcos, he lost his heart, but shows a new core in his chest, affirming that he took a new one from the mansion. Marcos gets enraged because he used the fragment with such a shoddy body. He shouts for Hans to die and casts the death finger spell. A beam of energy advances in Hans's direction. Hans blocks the attack with his hand, then questions the old man, saying it's not polite to attack someone while they're talking. Marcos tells him to shut up, shouting, I invested all my resources in the maturation process of that body. He laments that he was close to becoming the most powerful being and that this should not end with a skeleton turning into a demonic. Then the elder invokes the Thorn of Darkness spell. Hans analyzes the attack, comparing it to a high-level enchantment for a beginner. He is hit, and Marcos affirms that the fragment only worked because he was the one who prepared it. The elder then promises to destroy his body to use it as an experiment and cast broken ectoplasm. Freeing himself, Hans complains about the habit of naming abilities and shouts for Alfred's enemy to just die already. Marcos questions the name Alfred, asking, did you know someone in the village, or did you infiltrate already knowing everything? Suddenly, the energy thorns turn against their creator. Marcos is hit by his own spell, perceiving that Hans is getting used to dark magic too fast. He questions, is this the power of the fragment? The elder decides that he cannot continue losing time and initiates the pact of destruction. In another part of the village, a hooded man attacks one of his companions from behind. The aggressor asks, what's your problem? While the injured one expels dark energy. The man-hit screams as that same energy erupts from his body and spreads to the others around. Raising a dark crown, Marcos questions, are the souls of the dark mages being drained? He places the artifact on his head, activating the crown of the broken and the resting place of death. Hans questions him, did you increase your power at the cost of your followers' souls? The elder recognizes that the fragment protected him, but now orders him to die with the flame of drained soul's darkness. Having completely black eyes, Marcos is hit by dark magic. With Marcos defeated, Hans's comments, I almost fell asleep with the skill name, and says, let's just finish this already. Approaching, he thanks the elder because, thanks to him, he could learn dark magic. Marcos laments, I will die this way. Hans strikes him, making him fall to the ground while calling him ridiculous. Staring at the body, he asks, is Alfred watching, because he made sure to avenge him? Then he looks at the moon and wishes, may my little friend rest in peace. The scene changes to a large castle during the night. Inside, a person prays kneeling before a statue. The figure raises her head, revealing to be a woman who looks up with surprise. The woman opens the door and calls for Bishop Martin. He greets her, noting that she finished praying. St. Resdar asks him, please contact the others. She then informs him that she detected signs of the immortal king's resurrection coming from the west, which leaves the bishop scared. Martin runs to start a meeting right now, while Rar thinks about the immortal king, recalling that his resurrection plunged the continent into destruction hundreds of years ago. She frowns. Looking out the window, she affirms, I will not allow something like that to happen again. Assessing the destroyed bodies, Hans realizes the damage to his troops was extensive. He then remembers that the fun part of being a necromancer is being able to use bodies to replenish his troops. But first, he decides he needs to take care of his damaged arm. He spots a fallen skeleton that seems suitable for repair. He tears off the arm from the other skeleton, stating that one looks good. Hans activates his super recovery skill to merge the new arm to his body. He tests the newly repaired arm and deems it perfect. Questioning, should I start replenishing the troops? Turning to one of the fallen bodies, he commands it, become my subordinate. He channels his power, dictated by malicious wisdom, into the body. The fragment of the immortal king lends its power to the spell. His magic contaminates the remaining power in the target's body, but the process removes the thought fragments and the skeleton falls apart. Confused by the result, Hans questions, why isn't this working? His remaining undead watch him in silence. He then concludes that after a few attempts, he is starting to get the hang of it. Hans looks at Marcos' body and decides what to do next. He prepares to turn the body into an undead with a soul in an attempt to extract information, but something in the process makes him stop. Lifting the body, he discovers that the old man has no soul. Hans finds a magic circle on the man's chest. Realizing that the soul was artificially extracted as a security measure, he drops the body, but decides he can still use it even without a soul. With a new plan, he decides to turn him into a high-level undead with self-awareness and good fighting skills. Hans begins the process, contaminating the remaining magical power in the body. Next, he removes the remaining thoughts and inserts a new ego. The body rises as a death sorcerer and awaits its master's orders. Hans is surprised to see that he not only has self-awareness, but also can speak. He names him Malcolm, ordering him, obey me. Then he punches him for his hesitation, and Malcolm finally responds with yes. Hans notes that he has no memory of his past life, but decides he will continue to torment him for his crimes. He calls for Malcolm again, who responds promptly. Taking his new servant staff, Hans finds it quite cool. Positioning himself with the new staff before the pile of bodies he defeated, he takes a deep breath. Among the dead, the face of a zombie stands out. He approaches, recognizing that specific zombie among the others. Then he places his hand on his head, identifying him as the young man who killed Jeffy. Turning to the burning village, he grants an end to all of them. In his apartment, Han Seong-hyun wishes the young zombie and his family to rest in eternal peace. Satisfied with his meal, he grabs his cell phone and starts browsing. Seeing the treasure his avatar found, he wonders, what is the price of gold these days? Then he prepares to take a look at his total earnings. Suddenly, the avatar Hans materializes in front of him, surprising him. Appearing to be malfunctioning, the skeleton tries to say something. Han Song-hun shouts, system, cancel the avatar. Back in the safety of his room, he recovers from the scare. Thinking he almost died, he ponders what to do and decides he needs to improve his unique skill first. Opening the karma shop, seeing that he earned more points than expected, he selects the option to improve his skill. A system notification informs him that with the skill's growth, his mental strength has surpassed the normal. He acquires the tranquility skill, which protects his mind against external attacks and stimuli. Han Song-hyun starts putting the gold bars into a bag. He feels good in Hans's presence, realizing that the new skill also applies to his main body. He finds it strange how he always seems to get the skills he needs. Then he decides it's time to leave to sell the gold. At the bank, he asks them to deposit all the gold into his account, leaving the employees surprised. Han Song-hyun leaves the bank, thanking them and wishing them to continue the good work. He reveals that in case of an emergency, he hid Hans in his shadow using black magic. He even placed a mask on the skeleton as a precaution in case he needed to summon him. He then concludes that perhaps he was worrying for nothing. But suddenly, an enormous creature smashes a store's display window right behind him. The creature and a masked man celebrate that they won the mega jackpot. The beast man wonders, how is there so much gold in that place? But his partner hurries him to run. Then the man jumps onto the creature's back, and they flee the scene together. Han Song-hyun steps into the path of the thieves, calling them villains and shouting, "Someone report them." They are villains known for using their awakened powers to commit crimes. Han Song-hyun knows that there are guardians to protect citizens from people like them. The beast man attacks him with a direct punch to the face. Fallen to the ground, Han Song-hyun covers his face as the thieves escape. He remains on the ground, unable to do anything to stop them. Meanwhile, the masked man celebrates that the plan is working and they have time before the guardians arrive. They just need to find Portal, and the beast man spots her right ahead. The beast man shouts upon seeing Portal fallen on the ground. He kneels beside her to wake her, but the girl points to something behind them. The duo turns and faces Hans, and the beast man states, "That damn thing isn't a guardian." Preparing his hand for an attack, Han stands firm because Han Song-hyun can do nothing. Hans emerges from the ground and grabs the villain's legs, but Hans can, and he prepares for the fight. A group of men rushes, pointing the way forward. The returned association guards shout that their prey cannot escape. Meanwhile, the team arrives at a warehouse and questions what happened, seeing several people collapsed. One of them observes a beast man on the ground and assumes someone fought the villains and disappeared. Another believes the confrontation was recent, stating that the responsible party must still be nearby. Then the group leader orders everyone to check the surroundings. A shadow moves swiftly across the floor of the place. It emerges from beneath Han Song-hyun's feet where he was hidden. Outside, he stretches and expresses his relief. Han Song-hyun walks down the street, commenting, "It's a good idea to distress once in a while." El saber, Hines Han Song-hyun's second avatar celebrates enthusiastically. Gazing at the castle's gates, he announces, "I've finally arrived." Hines confirms to himself that old Malcolm wasn't lying about the city. Standing before the gate, he declares, "This is my debut in the new world." But upon entering the city, he notices something peculiar. He wonders, why is this place so empty? Then seeing a scene further ahead, he realizes there are no entry checks, and no one cares about strangers. A man tells a child, "I warned you." The child begs for more time. He turns to a young woman, reminding her, "You have 3 days to pay 2 silver coins, or there will be no choice." Hines considers the situation, but decides, "It's none of my business." However, as he passes, he ends up bumping into the young woman. She immediately bows, apologizing repeatedly, and he calls out to her. He asks, "Do you know the city well? I need a guide." The girl questions him, surprised, asking, "Who are you?" Showing 2 coins, Hines introduces himself. "I'm your future boss." Offering the money, he suggests, "Let's discuss the terms of the job." Later, the young woman, Dawn, points to an inn, assuring him it's one of the best places for you to stay. She introduces him to the owner, Diana, and asks, "Do you like it?" Hines hands a coin to Dayton and asks her, "Look for me when you wake up tomorrow." Lying in bed, Hines reflects that Dayton will be his guide and decides to see the situation as a good deed. Outside the inn, he decides it's time to sleep for now. But in the room, he complains that the bed is so uncomfortable he can't sleep and ends up sneezing. He hears another sneeze coming from outside and wonders what was that. Looking out the window, Hines is surprised by what he sees. Doughton is sitting outside and wishes him good night. He's confused about why she was waiting for him at dawn. The next morning, during their meal, he informs her, "You don't need to wait for me so early anymore." She agrees excitedly, and he reprimands her. "Don't call me Aussie." He then points to her food, asking, "Aren't you going to eat?" He offers more in case she is still hungry. Thanking him, Dadden accepts the food with a smile. As they walk, she explains, the city's name is Azanthu, located on the west side of the Talia Kingdom. Hines observes that the place looks like a common medieval town. However, a symbol spread everywhere catches his attention. Touching the mark on a wall, he realizes it isn't paint, but blood. The girl seems uncertain, and he then remembers something that happened the night before. Turning to Dadden, Hines asks, "Did you eat deer soup?" The girl confirms, surprised that he knows. With a smile, she explains, I have a very good sense of smell. He changes the subject and asks about the symbol. Dadden reveals, it's the emblem of the Veralac organization. Heinz pauses for a moment, reflecting on that organization. Suddenly, he stops and comments on a smell, making the girl curious. He asks, what did you smell just now? Excited, Dadden responds, I smelled freshly baked bread. You have to try it. Even with him reminding her they just ate, she runs ahead, saying, there's always room for more. The wind blows through a dark, silent alley. Someone is dragged into the alley, leaving a trail of blood on the ground. A few days later, Heinz waits for Dawn, noticing she has never been late for their meeting. Then, the men he encountered earlier approach and greet him. The group leader says, we want to have a chat with you. Heinz extends his handful of coins and offers them. He states, it's not much, but I hope it helps maintain public order. Heinz observes the same symbol he saw on the walls around one of the men's necks. He then remembers Dadden advising him, don't loiter in the alleys and get out of the city. A memory surfaces in which he hears one of the men ask, why did they take that little child? Connecting the facts, he realizes they might have captured Diana. Then Heinz turns and shouts, wait. He decides to intervene and clenches his fist. The young man approaches and says, I'm curious about something, but Dadden suddenly appears, calling out to him and making him look for Diana. The men question him, what is our brother curious about? He changes the subject and asks, were the silver coins I gave you enough? Next, he shows an empty coin pouch, stating, you took everything. Heinz then turns to Dawn, reprimanding her for being late and saying, you'll be without food. Interrupting him, she reveals, my little brother is gone. The girl explains, he had gotten better with the food, but now I can't find him anywhere. Heinz then remembers the men's conversation about having taken a child. He asks, was it Veralac? Dadden confirms, I heard them talking about taking a child. He tries to calm her, saying, I will pay the ransom if they ask, but she shouts, my brother Aaron will die. What they want is blood, not money. Surprised, Heinz holds her and asks, why would they want blood? Dan then reveals, this city is a food depot for vampires. Elsewhere, a figure comments on the strong smell of dark mana in the air. On a rooftop, he wonders, was there an internal conflict over the immortal king's fragment? He laments, I intended to take it when it matured. The vampire states, I don't know who gained the advantage, but I know where they went. With a smile, he declares, I'll catch them quickly. Heinz questions about the vampires. A shadowy figure confirms their presence in the city. Dadden explains that all organizations, including Veralac, are run by vampires. She cries, saying that even if someone manages to escape the city, no one ever survives. The girl laments that they were just doing their best to live one day at a time. In the end, she believes that she and her brother will die there. Then Heinz grabs her by the face and yells for her to wake up. He states that they do not have much time and asks if she knows where they might have taken her brother. Doden questions him, not believing that he will actually help her. She insists that it is too dangerous to go alone, but he simply says, do not worry. Heinz declares that he is an expert at making idiots suffer, beginning his mission to help the unfortunate girl. In a tavern, one of the men throws coins on the table, betting everything. His companion asks how he got so much money, and he responds that he ripped it off a tourist earlier. Suddenly, Heinz kicks the door and enters the place. The man stands up and asks, who the hell are you? His partner recognizes him as the tourist they robbed and suggests that he came to donate a few more pennies. One of the men mocks, asking if Heinz also came to make a donation. While the guard outside has already been defeated, Heinz grabs him and demands to know where they took the child they mentioned earlier. The man questions him, asking if he even knows who he is dealing with. Before he can finish, Heinz interrupts him with a blow. He states that he knows exactly what kind of trash people are who mess with other people's families for greed. And he simply calls him trash. With a single punch, Heinz defeats him and warns that now there are only two left. The other two prepare and advance to attack him, one of them wielding a knife. Heinz advances too, confident that he can win the fight. He is attacked simultaneously by the two men. One of them manages to stab the knife into his abdomen, but the man realizes, surprised, that the knife cannot pierce him. Heinz takes advantage of the distraction to land a punch on his face. He then reveals that he is wearing a Korean knife-proof vest. The last man advances with an axe trying to hit him. The club is blocked by a barrier and the man questions, what is that? Then Heinz grabs his wrist and takes him down, completing the trio. He looks at one of his pieces of equipment, commenting that it is a good thing he brought many magic items. With everyone on the floor, he wonders if it is over and if he did not bring too many items. Suddenly, a new group of men appears on a staircase, questioning the mess. They run towards him to attack him, and Heinz realizes that he spoke too soon. Surrounded by fallen men, he He recovers his breath and wonders why there are so many. Heinz pulls a weapon embedded in his shoulder, lamenting that he lost count during the fight. He then turns to the last conscious man. Stepping on his head, Heinz asks, "Where's the little boy you guys took?" The man refuses to tell and threatens him, saying, "You will regret this." He continues, warning that your boss will arrive any moment and end your life. Heinz thanks him for the information he just received. Then he warns him to worry about your own life. Heinz enters a room and asks a boy if he is Aaron. The boy shrinks into the corner, begging to be let go. Heinz approaches to calm him, explaining that his sister sent him to save him. The boy asks if he knows his sister while Heinz suggests they leave so he can explain everything. But before they could leave, a large bat lands on the window. A voice questions, "Who dares to touch my food in my restaurant?" The mysterious figure asks, "Who dares to interrupt me while I am eating?" A vampire appears before them and asks if Heinz is from the Oath of Audacity. He then questions if the young man is the child's brother and warns him about the consequences of facing them. Pulling Aaron close, Heinz responds that he is just a tourist who was robbed and decided to help the child. The vampire finds the answer amusing and manipulating blood, says that he prefers little boy's blood. He launches an attack and declares that Heinz will have to die here. Heinz grabs the boy and screams for him to run. With his hand engulfed in flames, he grabs the vampire's neck and warns him that he will also be burned alive. Then he pushes him away with force, screaming for him to get away. Heinz screams for Aaron to run and flee, taking the chance, but the vampire on the floor comments that he dodged. The vampire observes that he is faster than I imagined. He then advances, declaring that this will be a good warm-up before dinner. Heinz screams for the boy to go, warning him, "Do not come back, no matter what happens." He blocks the vampire's attack with his sword, but the opponent extends his other hand towards him. The claws pierce Heinz's chest. The vampire comments on his resilient body and rapid recovery, but notes that the difference in strength is too great. He considers that a gourmet meal, while Heinz realizes that he would have already died if the vampire were not toying with him. Suspended in the air, Heinz decides that he cannot stand by doing nothing. The vampire blocks his punch and says that he will take a little piece of the main course. Holding him by the neck, he declares that the useless fight ends here. Approaching to bite his neck, the vampire warns that he will pay dearly. Heinz then decides that if there is a difference in strength, the only solution is for them to die together. Suddenly engulfed by flames, his body surprises the vampire, questioning if that is a magic item he was hiding all along. The vampire recoils. He recalls that he got the idea when he saw the alcohol spreading on the floor when he was knocked down. He then thought he could turn the tables using one of his items. Calling him crazy, the vampire asks if he really plans to die together. With his body in flames, Heinz pushes him away with force. Mocking him, the vampire calls him a weak piece of meat. But Heinz surprises him with a headbutt, throwing him to the ground. He reminds him that this gourmet food is resistant and recovers fast, and then screams that he is not in the mood to become a meal. Fallen and wounded, the vampire begs him to stop. Then a massive fire explosion consumes the entire area. Amidst the burning city, a tower still stands. Fallen amid the flames. Heinz comments, "The scene is impressive." Reflecting on it, he admits that still being alive in such a situation could be a problem. Even with his body crumbling, he seems to accept what is to come. Heinz concludes that his mission to help the unfortunate girl was a success. In the distance, Diana hugs her brother, who screams towards the flames. At another moment, Diana is working when a customer interrupts her. The man informs her, "I left the money on the table." She thanks him. Soon after, a young man asks, "Can I also get in line?" She agrees with a smile and invites him to sit down. But then, looking closer, Diana recognizes him. The young woman runs and hugs him, relieved that he is well. Heinz comforts her, asking, "Do I look like someone who would fall for a trap like that?" However, the avatar truly died this time. Han Song-hyun knows it will take a week to summon him again, and that Diana will be worried. Wondering what to do, he considers if he should take the opportunity to control a new avatar. He then declares, from now on, this will be Heinz too. Using a previously created avatar, he goes to the location, questioning if Diana would realize it was someone else. But the young woman was sure it was him, since the essence of his soul was the same as before. Diana warns him, saying, "You cannot go back there anymore, as the vampires will be looking for you." He reassures her, stating, "I have already resolved everything I needed to. After all, with Immortal King Hands by my side, vampires are no problem at all." Back in his room, Heinz discovers he needs to wait 10 days for the interdimensional transmission. He then realizes it will take longer than he thought. Suddenly, the vampire who is observing the city appears and grabs him by the neck. Accusing him, the vampire states, "It was you, wasn't it?" He explains that the traces there lead to the forest, and Heinz realizes the vampires have already discovered him. The vampire questions him, asking, "Is a tourist in the area controlled by the vampire who was murdered?" Heinz tries to retaliate, but cannot find strength. Recognizing that this guy is also a monster, the vampire holds him, commenting, "I cannot feel the aura of dark magic, nor the scent of your kin's blood." Heinz asks, "What are you talking about?" "I do not know what happened. I was sleeping," insisting. The vampire asks, "Do you really not understand the situation?" He bites him on the neck. After tasting the blood, the vampire warns, "I will speak again, but very slowly." Heinz touches his neck, realizing he can no longer lie. His body begins to transform, and his race is changed to vampire. Approaching, the vampire repeats the question while Heinz obtains the lesser bloodline ability. He then questions him, "Are you truly unrelated to the Oath of Daring?" Releasing strong pressure, Heinz's blood compels him to surrender to the superior vampire, but he replies, "I am just a simple traveler." But he realizes he can ignore that will. His mind core acts as a filter, sifting through the instinct of submission in his blood. The vampire wonders if he misunderstood and calls him to follow, saying, "We have something to do." Heinz then decides he will follow him to get more information. They arrive at the Azanthu branch headquarters of the Veroslack clan. Upon entering the headquarters, Lore Vampire is greeted by the other vampires. Two of them observe Heinz questioning, "Why did the Lord accept such an inferior sire?" Suddenly, a female vampire grabs him, celebrating the arrival of fresh blood. She introduces herself as Roselica and offering a drink asks, "What is your name?" He replies, "I am Heinz." She tells him, "Do not be tense. We are both of lesser blood." Roselica then insists that he drink some of the freshly drawn blood. Heinz decides to drink to avoid any suspicion, but upon tasting it, he realizes that even with his mind core, he still feels a strong bloodlust. So he blocks the taste and smell to be able to drink. After taking a sip, Heinz comments, "It is delicious." Rosalica flirts with him, and the young man asks her about the meaning of lesser blood. She realizes he knows nothing about vampire ranks. The vampire explains, "Those of lesser blood are like knights, and those of pure blood, like Lord Vampire, are the nobility." She continues saying, "The clan leaders, the royal-blooded, are royalty, and sacred blood is a type of faith." Rosilica concludes explaining their faith is in the progenitor to whom they owe absolute obedience. Lord Vampire calls everyone's attention from atop a balcony. He announces, "Since everyone is gathered, I will get straight to the point." Pierre, a pure-blooded vampire, informs the fragments of the immortal king, which the Oath of Daring possessed, are missing. Tiapol, another pure-blooded vampire, adds they were last seen coming to the city, but disappeared without a trace. Heinz questions about the fragments, and Rosalica asks, "Do you not know what that is about?" Explaining that dark sorcerers from a nearby village were cultivating the fragments. She makes him realize that those were the Oath of Daring. The vampire then orders, "Everyone investigate your designated areas and report anything suspicious." Later, as they walk through the city, Rosalica complains, "My skin will burn if I keep walking around." Heinz agrees that sunlight makes him weak, and she hurries him, saying, "We cannot stand still," commenting that it was a wasted effort to move our fragments here. The vampire sighs. He interrupts her, asking, "Do they also have immortal king fragments here?" Rosalica confirms, explaining, "The dark sorcerers are going to merge their fragments with those of the vampires." Heinz realizes this is a stroke of luck, as it is probably the pure-blooded vampire who is protecting the fragments. Holding her, he demands, "I need to know the location of the fragments." The vampire just laughs and asks, "Why would someone like me know something like that?" Suddenly, Diana, while eating, states, "Perhaps I might know something." Clarifying for a surprised Heinz, she says, "I think I know the location of the immortal king's fragments." The revelation leaves him completely shocked. Hansong Hun asks if Diana knows where the immortal king fragments are. She replies, "Yes, but she isn't sure of the details since it happened a long time ago." About a year ago, Diana briefly worked cleaning tombs, and every Friday, members of the Verlac organization visited the stone chamber. From inside the place, a terrible and evil smell came out. Hansong Hyun concludes that this is definitely worth investigating. He thanks her for the information. He assures her he will handle everything alone and asks them to hide. But the young woman holds him by the arm, calling out to him. Noticing that his smell is different than usual, she narrows her eyes. Without an alternative, Han Song-hun confirms that her nose cannot be fooled. He reveals what happened. He assures her he won't let her be affected. He asks her not to worry. Diana continues to hold him. She suggests that if it gets hard for him, it's okay if he drinks some of her blood. She just asks him not to overdo it. Han Song-hyun places his hand on her head. He comments, "You really know how to talk too much." He says, "That's enough." He just asks for the location of where the terrible smell comes from. Screams echo from a cemetery during the night. Inside a chamber, a voice orders a man, "Get up and stand straight." Teopole approaches the injured man. He asks, "Do you want to die?" Then he proposes that if he hits him with the sword once, he will let him go in peace. The injured man firmly wields his sword and advances to attack. Next, tendrils project from Tapo's hand towards the man. They wrap around his entire body and pierce him everywhere. The man's body begins to dry completely. Tipple complains that this is too boring. He leaves the body suspended in the air. He calls a servant and orders him, "Clean up this trash and bring a stronger sacrifice." The servant replies, "Yes, Lord Teopole." He drags the body away. Turning, the servant asks, "Who is there?" Suddenly, a group of skeletons attacks the servant. Teopole turns and questions, "How did those dirty corpses get in here?" Then he orders his servants, "Get rid of those disgusting things." A larger skeleton crushes one of the advancing servants, creating a barrier of thorns on the ground. Tipple tries to protect himself. Trapped, he asks, "What is that creature? Is it a necromancer from the Oath of Audacity?" He also questions, "How did that creature know about this place?" Han simply remains silent before him. The vampire realizes he won't speak. He says, "It doesn't matter," and states, "I will ask the questions when only your head is left." Thiopo advances and attacks the surrounding skeletons. One of the skeletons is completely shattered by the blow. Hans then questions Teopo's talk about his head, but the destroyed skeleton begins to regenerate, challenging Teopole. Hans tells him, "Try it." Skeletal hands and thorns emerge from the ground around Teopo. A vampire arrives announcing, "The followers of the vampire lord are outside. I came to help." Teopo orders him, "Focus on helping me." The demonic is very strong. He asks the newcomer by time for the reinforcements. Suddenly, Han Song-hyun bites him. He wonders, "Why is there blood on me?" Tapo screams at Han Song-hyun, questioning, "Have you gone mad?" Han Song-hyun extends his hand towards Teopole. The vampire recognizes that as black magic. He wonders, are he and the demonic in cahoots? He then orders Han Yong-hyun, "Stop that." Teopo screams, "Drinking the blood of one's own race is a sin that stains the mind." The vampire who is bitten by him begins to wither. Standing over the body, Han Yong-hyun states, "That doesn't work with me." He acquires blood magic. He comments that with this new ability, he will have an advantage. Han Seong-hyun states, "I can break the barrier," but Hans informs him there isn't enough time for that. Han Song-hyun declares, "In that case, I will smash." With an attack, he explodes the chamber ceiling. Both look up and exclaim, "We found what we were looking for." It was the second fragment of the Immortal King. Hans approaches and extends his hand to pick up the artifact. Upon touching it, he is hit by an intense flow of thoughts. He realizes that even filtering the fragment has many negative thoughts. Then all the mental power of the clones is focused on Hans. A large mass of energy erupts from the place. Vampire arrives with his followers. He wonders, did I arrive too late? He spots a figure floating in the sky. Vampire orders his men, "Shoot there." The creature in the sky is hit by the attacks, but Hans absorbs the fragment into his chest. Teopole appears and attacks him from behind. Vampire observes the creature in front of him. The regeneration ability evolves into the special ability of immortality. He also acquires the special ability Forbidden Knowledge. The entity's information reveals him as an arch-lich. One of the knights spots strange movement in the distance and asks, "Is something on fire?" His companion confirms the location is near Azantha City. The man coughs as he catches one of the particles falling from the sky. The knight orders them to turn the horse around, stating, "I need to report the phenomenon to the saint immediately." He then realizes those are not ordinary ashes. Vampiro and Hanung-hyun observe the figure floating in the air, identifying it as the sign of the Immortal King's resurrection. He pales. Vampiro says, marveling, he became almost 10 times stronger just with that. With the fragment's power, Hans's rank was elevated and his dark magic increased explosively. He now possesses the traits of malignant wisdom and forbidden knowledge. With this, Hans gained unconditional knowledge of dark magic and inherited all its secrets. Hans holds a staff. Dark smoke rises from the ground, enveloping the vampires. Vampiro wonders, is that a trick? What is the plan? One of his men says, "We need to get out of here." But a shadowy hand grabs him. Vampiro turns as he sees one of his men being thrown high into the air. Suddenly, he finds himself surrounded by shadows, and he is pierced from all directions. Hans states, "You are certainly stronger than the other pure bloods, but now you are nothing but a blood bag. This leads Vampiro to question, did you absorb the entire fragment? The vampire asks, how did you manage to withstand so much malice alone? Hans replies, is that what you wish to know? He then reveals, it is because I am not alone. Meanwhile, a silhouette emerges behind Vampiro. Han Song-hyun stands over the fallen body of the vampire. A notification announces that the entity has met the conditions to grow and its lineage has evolved to pure blood. Satisfied, he states, I can evolve even faster by devouring my own kind. He promises, I will devour all vampires. The surviving vampires regroup in the forest, unsure of what to do. Roselica comments, we wouldn't have been defeated so easily if Perito were here. But another vampire warns, the opponent cannot be underestimated. Perita analyzes the tracks left behind, noticing an excessive amount of magic. She concludes the opponent is too powerful. With the sun beginning to rise, she decides they need to return to the main base and request reinforcements. Han Song-hyun runs desperately through the streets of a village. A man runs desperately through the streets of the city. He hides and comments. The vampires who considered themselves superior were killed in a second. As he laments, trusting them, a shadowy figure appears and places a hand on his arm. Screams echo through the city, where Hans remained to deal with the remaining members of Arkalak. Meanwhile, Heinz hires merchants to safely take Diana's children out of the city. Sitting around the campfire, he prepares a meal and adds some pepper. Heinz serves the special steak to the two children. One of the boys thanks him, saying, it is delicious. Heinz replies, eat well. Heinz observes that the children look much better now that they are away from the dangers of the city. He asks if their uncle has a store in the eastern part of La Polis, and the child confirms. The boy expresses uncertainty if they will be well received, but Heinz reassures him, do not worry. Reflecting for an instant, he realizes he has grown attached to the children and that it would hurt to leave them. Heinz realizes he has changed a lot since arriving there and how long it had been since he felt something like this. The children call out to him, pulling him from his thoughts. The girl asks, are you okay? Or is your glucose low? Heinz assures her, I am fine. I already ate my share by devouring the remaining vampires in the village. Meanwhile, Hans transforms the bodies into undead and urges one of them to enter quickly. Commenting on how incredibly convenient the place is, he notes that it seems endless. Hans reflects that with more research, he might be able to open a subspace on Earth. Suddenly, an attack is launched in the direction of the portal, and it directly hits one of the skeletons guarding the entrance. A female vampire approaches and asks, are you still wandering around their city? She questions, are you not underestimating them too much? Ovor Vaskoslak, a true blood vampire, asks, are you truly part of the Oath of Audacity? Hans accepts the compliment and introduces himself. I am a proud member of the Oath of Audacity. But the female vampire calls him a liar, asserting their hideout was attacked, and you stole the immortal king's fragment. She says that no longer matters, and advances to attack, guaranteeing you will die either way. The blow from her scythe is blocked by Hans's hand. Leaning in to observe the attack, he assesses the female vampire's strength. Then he leaps backward, and the female vampire realizes that was close. The female vampire states, to possess such power, a pure blood is not an easy opponent. Suddenly, Hans finds himself trapped inside a barrier. Ovor reveals, my clan has the best blood sorcerers. They created this barrier to prevent you from leaving. Hans concludes that he could break through the barrier if he tried, but he needs more time to get used to his new power. The female vampire then threatens, I will crush your head and rip the fragment from your body. He says, that only leaves me one option. He then remembers his identity as Hans of the Oath of Audacity. Hans declares, I am your death. He promises, even if I retreat now, I will return to finish you. Deciding that a villain's mark is to make a dramatic exit, he takes a deep breath. Hans Song-hyun orders, Hans, cancel the invocation, and the creature disappears. Stunned, the sorcerers are confused by his last words. Ovor wonders, how did he get out of the barrier? She then spots a figure on top of the wall. One of the sorcerers is hit and falls to the ground. She then realizes she was hit by a holy silver arrow from the paladins. One of her companions shouts, we are screwed. The order of paladins from the Church of the Supreme God has surrounded the tomb and is approaching. Or curses the Lich. She wonders, did he stay in the city to delay them? She swears, I will find him and kill him no matter where he fled. Han Seong-hyun celebrates. Hans is alive, but the skeleton complains. Canceling the invocation is almost cheating. Hans recalled the dramatic lines he used, introducing himself as the incarnation of death and the Oath of Audacity. Han Song-hyun put his hands to his face in despair. He threw himself onto the bed, questioning what kind of generic villain line was that, and stating that he was dying of embarrassment. He kept wondering why he had said that while Hans sat beside him. Then he reflected that in reality, he felt a little proud of what he had done. After all, he had dealt with a group of vampires by himself, saving the girl in the city. He concluded that speaking that way, he even sounded like a hero. Stretching, he wondered, for doing so much, shouldn't I have earned a lot of karma points? Han Seong-hyun then decided to open the karma shop, but he was surprised by what he saw. The shop balance showed over 700,000 points. He wondered why he had so much if he had spent everything on a last upgrade. He then questioned if causing discord between the dark mages and the vampires would have had any effect. He decided it was all right and resolved to improve his unique skill again. Han Seong-hyun selected the upgrade option. A notification informed him that the limit for avatar summons had increased. He wondered if there was any additional ability. Another notification informed him that he had acquired the special skill persona. He wondered if it was similar to the Mind Core. He let out a small laugh. The special skill persona was described as one that used an avatar as a vessel to contain emotions. Han Seong-hyun understood that the system had determined he needed this skill and believed he knew why. He recalled making connections with strangers and helping others defeat powerful enemies. He, who had been locked in his room for 2 years, was able to do all of this. The reason was that for him, all of it seemed like a game, not real at all. He faced the reality that in truth, he was still locked in his room. The loneliness, sadness, and anger that he had suppressed, all the accumulated negative emotions came to the surface. Then Han Seong-hyun called for Hans. He ordered his avatar, transfer those useless and rotten feelings into the vessel. The emotions were transferred from his body. Han Seong-hyun felt refreshed, but noticed that the emotions had not disappeared, only stored. Turning to Hans, he worried that the avatar had absorbed these feelings. But Hans told him, "Do not worry." Hans affirmed, "Pain and despair are my life companions. Now they no longer bother me." Han Seong-hyun became confused, realizing that without noticing, Hans's tone of voice had changed. Hans understood, and Han Seong-hyun questioned, "Will an avatar filled with emotions have its own personality?" He then turned to the side. Suddenly, he heard an explosion and wondered what was happening. Looking out the window, he questioned if there was another villain in the city. Han Seong-hyun decided not to care, stating, "The Guardians will take care of it. It is not my problem." Hans then asked, "Is a reason necessary to eradicate evil?" Han Seong-hyun looked at his avatar in silence. After transferring his negative emotions to Hans, it became clear to him. He realized he was just avoiding the situation as he always did. The truth was that he wanted to eliminate villains more than anyone, but made excuses because he lacked courage. Hans explained that as the order of the world was shaken, outlaws caused chaos everywhere. "Now I will become their law." From a distance, 2 guards observed the destruction and wondered how many times that had already happened. One guard commented, "They have started organizing terror attacks," while the other questioned, "Why haven't we received reinforcements yet?" A masked man observed that the villains had formed a faction and that the situation seemed to have reached its end. He then said, "It would be a shame to leave empty-handed." The spheres revealed themselves as large eyes. He sent them to become his eyes and ears in the darkness and ordered them, "Seek the sinners hidden in the shadows." Elsewhere, a man asked for an ashtray. Then one of his companions offered a young man as a human ashtray. He prepared to use the young man's face while one of the floating eyes observed the scene. Cries of supplication echoed from inside a house. A woman embracing a child asked, "Where could we flee?" The man raised his belt to attack them, but the floating eye continued to watch. In a shop, a crowbar broke the window. A masked thief entered the establishment. The masked man turned to the cash register and commented, "The place is full now." The masked man affirmed, "I can see everything. I will punish these villains who are nothing but trash." He grabbed the thief by the neck, stating, "The punishment will be traumatic." Then he held the abusive man from behind, guaranteeing it will be extremely traumatic. Before the aggressors, he declared, "I will engrave fear into your souls." He approached one of the men and warned him, "Remember this day, and when evil sprouts again inside you, you will see me again in the darkness." Screams of terror echoed through the city during the night. Feeling more accustomed to his new power, the masked man affirmed, "I need more." With his floating eyes surrounding him, he declared, "I need to clean up even more." He then positioned himself atop a building, determined to purify the city. He will find himself in darkness once more. Screams of terror echo through the city during the night. Stretching with the sunrise, the masked man takes a deep breath. He finds it immensely satisfying to clean out the trash hidden in the darkness all night long. The eye of darkness proved useful, but he notes its limitations are clear. When exposed to light, its power weakens and disappears, so he needs a more efficient way to locate enemies. Unable to unleash the undead on the city, he wonders what he should do. Some pigeons fly by and soil him. He threatens them, saying, "I should kill you and turn you into my servants." Suddenly, an idea emerges. He reflects on an eye that is everywhere, invisible, and able to move freely. Familiar magic was a slavery technique used to control animals. Hans is in a cave surrounded by pigeons. He tries to use his magic on them, but wonders why it is not working. It would be great if it looked normal, but had strong contagion. However, decreasing the amount of magical power weakens the contagion. He finally understands what he needs to do. He creates the final slavery, contagion magic. Hans holds a cage and wonders if it is done. Suddenly, a monstrous creature emerges from inside the cage, surprising him. After 3 weeks of continuous research, there has still been no significant result. He turns to the last test subject, determined to succeed this time. The bird struggles as he orders it to stay still and adjust the amount of magical power. Then he finally casts the definitive version of the slavery, contagion magic. Holding the bird in his hand, he feels relieved it is over. But the pigeon suddenly flies away, catching him by surprise. The bird ascends to the sky and blends in with the others, looking normal on the outside. All that remains is to test the contagion. Next, it lands with other pigeons. The 3 pigeons gather. Soon after, they all appear with altered eyes, confirming the experiment's success. Hans observes the creatures who have now become his eyes and ears. He then orders them to fly and find his enemies. In a forest, a man observes the birds flying in the sky. He recalls Hans's last words, who introduced himself as his death. The knight approaches and reports to Archbishop Ladius. Tuskson informs him that after interrogating the last captives, he discovered the vampires are not allies of the immortal king's descendants. Ladius responds that they need more clues. As the immortal king grows stronger every moment, suddenly his cross begins to glow. He answers the saint's call. The immortal king's presence has been detected again inside a cave north of the location. Lady thanks her and promises he will meet her expectations. The cave entrance is revealed amidst a forest. Hans had prepared his familiars to send information when they encountered a monster. All that remained was to confirm if the process would work. Suddenly, he notices something strange. The movements of the familiars on the surface are erratic, as if they are fleeing. They also seem very scared, but he wonders why he has not received any information. Then he realizes his familiars encountered humans. When a group of knights advances through the forest, he questions whether humans coming to such a remote place could be an ambush. Through a pigeon's vision, he sees the cave entrance is surrounded by dozens of people. Suddenly, the pigeon is hit by an arrow. One of the soldiers yells Hans's name and warns, "Your tricks will not work on us." The paladin states that no evil can escape the divine gaze and that he can no longer escape. Then he demands, "Hans, surrender and face God's judgment." Hans recognizes him as a paladin of the order by the emblem he saw when he was in Verilask. He wonders how the order's servants found his location since divine power is problematic for dark magic. The paladin quickly advances towards him, but Hans grabs the blade with his hand. The knight says, "I never gave you a chance to speak." He continues, telling Hans, "Do not think you could deceive me with your glib tongue." Hans merely comments that the paladin is as stubborn and closed-minded as he seems. Then he attempts an attack against the man. The paladin blocks the blow with his hand and calls it a crude trick. He then declares, "Hans, you will not corrupt God's message," and strikes him squarely in the chest with his sword. Hans questions him, "Are you going to accuse me of a crime for punishing evil?" But the paladin shouts, "Ever since you touched forbidden power, you have become just like them." Hans questions, "What kind of logic is that?" He then realizes something unpleasant has been interfering with his magic from before. He receives a punch to the face. The impact throws him backward, colliding with the trees. Hans recovers on the ground, now surrounded, while the paladin orders them to prepare the chant. The choir members begin to sing in unison. He realizes the song is making him weaker. Although he could kill them to silence the chant, he cannot harm the innocent, so he invokes a shadow of the choir members. The paladin takes the opportunity and attacks him with an object. He yells, "Now is the time," and orders restrain Hans. The choir members cast chains in his direction. One of the chains hits his leg. Completely immobilized, he realizes he let his guard down too much. Suspended by chains, Hans admits, "I let my guard down." He realizes he cannot move or use magic. Seeing the men praying, Hans understands that they prepared everything to prevent his escape. A warrior states, "We worked hard to capture you." Hans replies, "That was to be expected. Then the man declares, "No evil has ever escaped this confinement. Have you given up resisting?" Han simply starts to laugh. He concludes there is no room for negotiation and says, "That is not going to happen." Bidding farewell, he challenges the church's minions. "Catch me if you can." The warrior does not know what Hans is planning, but prepares to attack. He advances, questioning, "Do you think I would let you escape?" But Hans considers the effort useless, no matter the strength of the confinement. With a command, he orders himself to release the summon and disappears. The warrior is incredulous that Hans escaped the restraints and fled. The scene shifts to a city while someone wonders, who was that guy? Lying in his bed, Han Song-hyun sighs. This situation is becoming problematic. Han Song-hyun reflects that he has too many enemies and wonders if he caused too much chaos wherever he went. He remembers the Shadow faction, the Oath of Daring. Then he recalls the vampire clan, Veroslack, and even one of the continent's greatest powers, the Great Divine Order. Suddenly, he asks, "Wait a minute." Han Sang-hyun gets up and points to a screen exclaiming, "The Karma Shop. Why was I rewarded?" Then he questions if what he is thinking is true. He concludes that the reason was for causing turmoil across the continent. Deciding to think about it later, the young man states, "I will focus on the original plan for now." A mask emerges in the dark environment. In an alley, a masked man says, "It is time to reap the results of my research." He explains the principle of a controlled entity spreading dark magic upon encountering another. With this, their eyes and ears will continue to expand. Soon, they will easily cover a place like Seoul. The masked man then notices something. A cat wonders, have they arrived already? Upon seeing a signal, he identifies it as the first. From inside the location, a voice pleads, "Save me." A woman on the floor begs the man with a knife, saying, "I will do anything if you spare me." A man moves away from the railing while the woman looks up. She sees a man with glasses outside and screams, "I have been kidnapped. Save me." When a man moves away, she questions, "Where are you going? Can you not hear me?" The woman is thrown to the floor and declares, "It is useless." The kidnapper holds her by the hair and says, "You can scream all you want. It does not matter how loud." He then explains, "Thanks to my ability, only I can see your screams and suffering." Pulling her closer to a microphone, he encourages her to scream louder. The man raises his knife and declares, "You will be in the top 3 of my collection." Suddenly, the studio window shatters. The kidnapper turns and questions, "What is your ability?" Then the masked man reveals his technique, identifying it as sound suppression and invisibility. The masked man states, "Your ability does not work on me. Your disgusting actions end today." Holding the woman, the kidnapper asks, "Who are you? Are you a guardian? How did you get in here?" Then he warns, "If you come any closer, the woman dies," but he only hears back a serious, "Is that so?" Suddenly, the woman is pulled behind him, and the kidnapper identifies him as a returnee. He accuses the newcomer of daring to steal his prey and swears, "I will kill both of you." The kidnapper advances with his knife drawn to attack, but his body stops mid-movement. The masked man says, "Judging by your words, this is not the first time you have done this." He approaches, touches the kidnapper's forehead, and asks, "Should I check?" Then he uses the necromancy, the lament of the dead. A vision shows the kidnapper attacking another victim who begs to be spared. Seeing the memory, the masked man concludes, he is a serial killer. I do not need to see anything else. He then sentences the criminal to death. The kidnapper screams while being consumed by the ability. Observing the floating body, the masked man says, even death is too merciful for him. He says he needs undead to command on Earth, and decides to transform the body into one of them. While transforming it with a method that drains all the blood, he comments, "I did not expect to create one so soon." The body becomes an intermediate undead, aghast. The masked man then orders the creature to come in, stating, "You might be quite useful from now on." Looking at the unconscious woman on the floor, he wonders, should I clean up this place before leaving? Outside, the police and a crowd have already gathered at the crime scene. There stands Park Hunchul, the leader of the Special Abilities AY's Criminal Investigation Division. One of his agents approaches and confirms that the scene's recordings are from the same serial killer they were trying to catch. He also reports that a returnee killed the killer, but they did not find a body, only dark magic in the bloodstains. Park Hunchul comments, "At least the idiot deserved to die," but he is irritated by the case's complication. He concludes that people who get drunk on power and play hero are also dangerous when he sees a mark on the wall. The mark of a mask makes him think about the act of performing executions. A police officer in the crowd looks at the rooftop and wonders, who is that lunatic idiot up there? On top of the building, the masked man holds a white cat and says, "I wanted to see his face at least once." At the South Seoul branch of the South Korean Return Association, someone calls for the manager. A woman enters the office, asking for a moment. She looks at the person sitting at the desk and says to herself, "Here we go again." Then she wakes up branch manager Yoon Jae-in, saying it's an important matter. June asks, "What's the problem this time?" The assistant informs her. The skill management department sent a cooperation request. She analyzes the case of the 3 jewel thieves' arrest and questions if it has a connection to the recent murder. The report describes the suspect as a black magic user wearing a long coat and a home mask. June leans back complaining, "Public safety is a mess. I almost feel like handing the case over to that guy." But the assistant reprimands her. She gets worked up, but then argues he has the necessary skills. He would be an excellent dog with the right leash. Juna then laments, asking, "Why can't he just join as a guardian?" The assistant points to the pile of documents and tells her, "Stop talking nonsense and get back to work." With a shout, she throws the papers into the air, exclaiming, "I feel like smashing all the villains." Elsewhere, Han Nung-hyun stretches and says, "Smashing all those villains was really satisfying." He reflects that unless it's a serial killer, he usually just plants a terror curse and punishes them appropriately. Looking at his reflection, he decides I'll have to take a look at the villain organization that caused chaos in public order. Han Nung-hyun decides that since he's finished things there, he should start paying attention to this world. A man desperately shouts for Diana and Aaron. He hugs the children and says, "You both worked hard." They console him. Heinz observes the reunion and is relieved that he seems to be a good person. He concludes it won't be necessary to resort to threats. The man shakes Heinz's hand, thanking him for bringing the children back. Diana then approaches and begins to talk about all the time they spent together. She hugs him, thanking him. Heinz says it's not goodbye. "I'll visit you all, so stay healthy." The girl confesses, "I was worried about the change in your personality, but I'm relieved that you're good." He then questions if his personality changed and if this is the influence of the persona. Hans's persona was a mix of negative emotions with a trait of seeking attention. He too who focused on infiltration and lies received a calm and composed personality. Aaron asks, "Where do you plan to go now?" Heinz reveals, "I will make a pilgrimage to the capital of the kingdom of Talia." The scene opens in the city of Thaleria. Heinz states, "There's only one reason I came to this place." He explains, "The capital is the headquarters of the goddess church and home to the largest temple on earth." Finding an alley, he makes sure no one is looking. Then he prepares to summon his 4th avatar. With the command avatar summon, he summons Heinlich. The new avatar possesses the unique warrior spirit trait, which grants him combat bonuses. Heinz explains, "Walking through the sacred city in a vampire's body has its limits." He hands a pouch to Heinlich. "Go toward the light." Inside a building, a voice requests, "Next believer, please come forward." Heinlich approaches the counter and pours out a large amount of coins and jewels. One of the men asks, "How much is that?" Heinlich replies, "It's my entire fortune." He declares his desire to dedicate everything to the goddess and become a holy knight to fulfill her will. Han Sung-hoon reflects that his previous avatars were an undead, a dark wizard, and a vampire, all children of darkness. But this time, his avatar will be a holy knight who wields a sacred sword and is respected by all. Heinlich confirms his decision with certainty. A man with a mustache extends his hand and says, "As an instructor, I will train you to be an excellent holy knight." But a scribe interrupts him, arguing, "We cannot accept a stranger as a holy knight, no matter how much he has donated." The instructor laughs and tells the scribe, "Don't worry." He explains, "The wicked reveal their true nature during training." He asks the recruit, "Do you have the confidence to show yours?" Heinlich replies, "Absolutely." At another moment, he is exhausted and begs for water. An enormous stone sphere rolls toward him. He calls it madness. He prepares himself and manages to stop the sphere with his bare hands. While holding it, he narrates, "It's been a month since I started Holy Knight training. At first, I thought the order was noble, but I found out it was just a bunch of perverted males." Heinlich struggles to keep holding the heavy sphere. An instructor reprimands trainee number 121, whose focus is slipping, and questions him, "Have you forgotten the rule to never stop praying?" He orders the trainee, "Concentrate. Sing your prayers again." The trainee begins to pray while the instructor demands more focus. Soon the instructor shouts the rule, telling him, "Sing your prayers and restore your broken body while you train." The instructor encourages the trainee to do one more repetition, and the young man shouts, "Goddess." Observing the training, Heinlich admits the method is efficient. A man celebrates, "My back feels great today." He asks to be hit harder. Another man flexes his arm as a spiked mace strikes him. Amidst the shouts of faith, Heinlich questions, "Do they really need to train in such a perverted way?" From a balcony, Marco comments, "The recruit I brought is no joke." He observes, "Even before baptism, Heinrich was already strong. I can't wait to see how much he'll improve." Heinrich questions why they're looking at him that way and says, "I feel uncomfortable. I don't want to attract the group's attention." Heinrich, panting, reflects that 3 months have passed since he began his Holy Knight training. He concludes that without his warrior spirit and super regeneration, he would have collapsed long ago. His body and stamina have improved, but he realizes that something else is more problematic. Holding him by the arm, a man asks if he has finished his lower body training. Invited by the instructor, he agrees to do some holy chest exercises together. Another man intervenes, saying, "On a day like this, it has to be a solid back workout." Heinrich moves away, ordering, "Get away from me, you muscular perverts." Outside the chapel, he sighs. Sitting with a colleague, he complains that not a day goes by without them calling him to train. His colleague says that's because the elders have high expectations. Suddenly, a group of novices announces they are coming. Among the crowd, Grand Archbishop Ladius of the main church and Sir Tuskson are identified. Commenting beside him, his colleague mentions they went on an expedition. They must have returned. He then recalls that Holy Knight pointing his sword at Hans. Heinrich wonders if they were looking for Hans all this time. At the altar, a priest announces to the trainees that the reason for their gathering is the performance of the baptismal ceremony for those who have passed the criteria. A priest explains that although it is earlier than usual, the ceremony was brought forward due to certain circumstances. He then asks the trainees whose names are called to step forward. Heinrich's colleague wonders why they are holding an event that normally only happens every 6 months. Heinrich says, "I can guess why." He deduces that the Holy Knights are desperately in need of reinforcements to pursue the heir of the immortal king. Either way, he sees this as a perfect opportunity to save time and test something. He refers to the new application of his persona and mind core abilities. The high priest calls out the trainee, Max Werowen. He asks if the young man swears to dedicate everything to Lord God and his life as a holy knight. The trainee confirms during baptism, those who receive it sacrifice all their mana to the deity, becoming unable to use magic, but receiving immense holy power. The size of the blessing each individual receives varies greatly, and the greatest factor determining the magnitude of the blessing is faith in the deity. The purer and more genuine the faith, free of lies or doubts, the stronger the holy knight becomes. The priest then calls the next trainee, Heinrich. He steps forward, asserting that this is exactly why he chose to become a knight. Heinrich reflects that until now he has only used his mind core to suppress external stimuli or contain his own emotions. But he realizes that the opposite is also possible. Using his persona ability, he will inject the emotion of faith into Heinrich. And when the high priest extracts his mana, he will use the mind core to filter out emotions like distrust and doubt. His mana will become pure, containing the essence of faith and mana itself. And to absorb the blessing to its maximum potential, he concentrates the mental strength of all his avatars into Heinrich. The high priest is astonished by the amount of holy power released. A wave of energy spreads through the hall. The other novices exclaim, "It is unbelievable." They point upwards. The holy power rises to the head of the deity statue. Holding him by the arm, one of the instructors now calls him Sir Heinrich. The high priest states that even newly baptized, he is already at the level of a priest and that his faith is impressive. Encouraged by him to continue his